Good morning, everybody. My name is David Oates. I'm the Chief Revenue Officer for Proda. Delighted to be here to talk about how Proda addresses the market and what we bring to the market. And thank you to the UK PropTech Association for inviting us. Where I'd like to start very quickly is there was a report from IDC a couple of years ago that said that the growth of data globally was growing exponentially, which we all knew anyway. But they're talking about 175 zettabytes of data in all industries and personal use. 175 zettabytes of data by 2025. And a zettabyte is 1,000 million bytes. If you think that the first thing I ever sold in this industry in the mid-80s was 16 megabytes of solid state disk that was about 30 feet long, it's quite incredible to think. And actually, Forrester, in a similar time, said that 73% of that data in the enterprise remains unused. Now, that's across all industries. In real estate, I absolutely believe that figure is higher. So we have a massive global data explosion. We have a massive data explosion in real estate, and that's starting to cause some issues in terms of effectiveness. But the good news is that according to McKinsey in their report in 2017, they said that 45% of that can be automated in terms of the work activity around data, even for some of the highest paid positions. And in real estate, even analysts are well paid. Every role is a cost, and we're therefore wasting a lot of that cost in terms of not automating stuff that can be done easily. And that McKinsey identified that the two areas with the highest potential for automation were processing and the collection of data. So this is where Proda focuses. One of the biggest problems in our industry today is that processing rent roll data involves a huge amount of resource. It's very time consuming. And there's things like the standardizing of data, converting it so it's consistent and it's reporting to consistent metrics. Making sure it's correct is a huge issue because, as we know, our industry exists almost exclusively on Excel, which by its very nature, whilst Excel is a great tool, does allow for human error. Translating that data into usable formats and bringing all that data together to aggregate it again into something really useful is all very, very time consuming. And if you look at the value chain, that issue is magnified, well, in this example, sevenfold. If you think about the flow, and we focus very much on the core data set in commercial real estate, which is the rent roll. If you think about the flow of a rent roll at the end of a reporting period, whether that's a month or a quarter or a half year or an annual reporting period, it flows up through the property manager that may be using SAP at the back end or Yardi into the operating partner, which is typically working on Excel. They have to report to the investment manager or the fund who may be using something like Coyote for managing assets or for looking at investing in assets. The investment manager, the fund, then has to report to the bank, to the insurer. They're also reporting jointly with valuers and surveyors, and they're obviously working with brokers on a regular basis. It's the same piece of data that's traveling through that chain and that's being processed by somebody at each step, almost from the scratch. And the reason for that is they're all coming in very, very different formats. Everybody has their own Excel format. So the risk of that, the time involved in that, the inaccuracy or potential inaccuracy involved in that, all of that is combining. And what it's leading to is a really slow adoption of technology. That lack of standards in data flow, in data management, is really hindering digital transformation. Now, there's been a lot reported in the press recently because of the current COVID-19 crisis that digital transformation is going to get pushed even further up the agenda. And I believe it may well be at the top of the agenda as people prepare for making sure that if this happens again, we're ready for it and we can operate as normally as possible. We need to fix that core problem to allow true digital transformation to take place. So Proda have a solution to some of this, particularly around the rent roll data. We have a web-based application, a SaaS application, that you can simply drag and drop rent rolls in any format, doesn't matter what the format is, into the Proda application. Proda will then standardize that data into a common data model, validate the data, check very simple things like, is the lease expiry after the lease start date, which, believe it or not, we've seen is sometimes not the case. Is there text in data fields, for example, because when you're trying to report on it, you know, a machine learning application cannot understand that data if there's different formats in the same field or in the same column. So, and then track changes against time series. So take a rent roll from last quarter and instantly compare it to a rent roll from this quarter, instead of somebody spending hours having to eyeball those two Excel files and try and figure out where the changes are. I think one of the core strengths of Proda is once you've done all that validation, all that standardization, you've tracked all those changes, that data can then be outputted into any target format. Whether you're uploading to Coyote, whether you're uploading to Argus, whether you're uploading to an Excel underwriting model, we can output in exactly the format you want, so that very, very quickly, and when I say very quickly, I mean a second, you can hit a button and transfer it straight into your underwriting model, or straight into Coyote, or straight into Voyanta, for example. So the whole purpose of the solution is to make it easy to work with that rent roll data and make it easy to integrate into other software systems. Excuse me. So in terms of the standardization, we input any format, we standardize it into a model, into a data model. We're not imposing a standard, we're just putting it into a standardized data model. And what that means is you'll have standardized column headings, standardized date formats, standardized numeric formats. So we're not forcing you to go down any route, we're just putting it in a format that systems can recognize, understand, and work with. We've analyzed thousands and thousands of rent rolls now across various jurisdictions and countries, and we capture about 1,600 variables, and we output more than 2,000 variables, and that data model changes every day or evolves every day. We had an instance just the other day where a customer wanted a very specific variable capturing that nobody else had asked for. We put that in there. And because we're a machine learning based platform, because we're an AI driven solution, the more data we put in, the more variables we put in, the more the machine learns, the faster it becomes, the more effective and efficient it becomes. So if you look here, just as a quick screenshot, on the left, you've got what looks like a typical rent roll format in Excel. On the right is Proda transforming that into a standard data model. In this case, taking extension options, and we see these in lots of different formats, where on the left it's in months, on the right we've converted it into dates. And the reason we do that is that then the analysis becomes much simpler and the machine can start to recognize those patterns. Now, obviously, as we know, rent rolls also quite often include errors, and it is purely because it's manual, it's processing. We've seen rent rolls that have got 14,000 rows. There is no way the human eye can effectively do that. Using machine learning, that becomes very quick, and it means we can check for inconsistencies in that data set and then track the changes between subsequent rent roll uploads, both at the unit level, at a project level, at a portfolio level, and actually we can effectively become a comps database as well, just by the amount of data that's in the solution. So here you can see an example of auditing data. The pink highlighted fields are where we found an error. In this case, the lease expiry is after the lease start. We'd flag that, is before the lease start. We'd flag that as an error. It means you're not putting wrong data into underwriting models further down the line, and therefore protecting your investment and reducing your risk. So our goal ultimately is to get, if you think back to a few slides ago, that model of everybody transferring data or emailing Excel spreadsheets to each other, which then have to be reprocessed. Our goal is to provide seamless data exchange between different entities within this chain. And we're not completely there yet. We're a long way down the road. The basic one-to-one model works perfectly. The data transfer, the seamless data transfer, we're getting close to. But we've shown that our internal trials and some of our customer trials have proved that we can get almost, we say almost 100%, but certainly in excess of 95% efficiency gains. Which if you think about the time, we know of one client that believes he can reduce his full-time employee count that's working on rent roll data by about 90%. And as we come back to work after this crisis and we get back into our offices and we are faced with the challenges that the industry no doubt will have, then having the ability to reduce cost and to move highly skilled, highly paid full-time employees from working on data processing to working on tasks that actually generate revenue or improve the value of an asset has to be a real gain for any business. So here's an example. We're actually in POC with a fund, a bank, 2 operating partners and a property manager, where if you look down the left-hand leg, the property manager is ingesting or creating the rent roll, which is they're always at the start of the data chain, taking that rent roll, standardizing it, and sending it straight to the operating partner. Now, right now, the operating partner would then have to take that and reprocess it. But now using Proda, they can ingest the file that had been sent from the property manager. That flies through Proda in an instant. It's very, very fast because the work's already been done. They don't have to do any data processing. They can then check that, make sure it's fine, and send it to the fund, who can then ingest it at the same time, reducing all their processing issues, output that to their underwriting model, but also output it to their lender, to the bank, who, without any more processing, can take it into Proda and then output it into their loan management system. Now, we're in POC at the moment for this, working well. And in this situation, in this particular case, we have reduced the processing time by in excess of 97%. So positive gains that really add value to the industry. Now, one of the challenges the industry faced historically is, as you all know, we've been talking about digital transformation in this industry, to my knowledge, 7, 8, 9 years. And everybody's claimed to be too busy. And therefore, we have very, very little standardization, very little data transformation. Even in some of the largest organizations, a lot of that transformation is in pockets. I think now, with what's happened in the last 2 or 3 months, we have no choice. We have to look at data transformation. And the starting point for that transformation needs to be the core data sets, in this case, the rent roll, because that's the data that you as investors, as operating partners, as property managers, even as PropTechs, that's the data that you're basing your biggest decisions on. So thank you for listening. I appreciate the time. I hope it's been useful. As I said, my name's David Oates. Please feel free to contact me or anybody at Proda, and we'd be happy to work with you. Thank you very much for your time.